Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where we uncover the hidden fortunes that might be hiding in your pocket change right now. And today we're starting with something that will absolutely blow your mind, because what if I told you that a simple quarter from 1987, a coin that millions of Americans handled without a second thought, could be worth an absolutely staggering $100 million? Yes, you heard that right. $100 million for a quarter that looks just like any other quarter sitting in your change jar, your car's cup holder, or maybe even in that old piggy bank you haven't opened in years. The 1987 Washington Quarter, minted in Philadelphia, represents one of the most extraordinary opportunities in modern numismatics, and here's why this particular coin has collectors, investors, and everyday people scrambling through their loose change with magnifying glasses and hope in their hearts. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this 1987 quarter so incredibly valuable, I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video, because after we explore this $100 million beauty, we're going to reveal even more Washington quarters from different years that have reached values that will make your jaw drop even further, including one that's valued even higher than this one. And trust me, you won't want to miss the final coin we're covering today, because it might just be the most valuable quarter in existence. But first, let's talk about 1987 and what was happening at the Philadelphia Mint that year. The mid-1980s was an interesting time for American coinage. Ronald Reagan was president, the economy was experiencing growth after the recession of the early 80s, and the U.S. Mint was producing hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the demands of a cash-based economy that was still years away from the digital payment revolution. The Washington Quarter, featuring the iconic profile of George Washington designed by John Flanagan, had been a staple of American commerce since 1932, and by 1987, the design was so familiar that most people never gave these coins a second glance. They were just quarters, something you used to buy a candy bar, feed a parking meter, or do your laundry. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating, and this is where that $100 million valuation comes into play. During the minting process at the Philadelphia facility in 1987, something extraordinary happened, something so rare and so unusual that it created what collectors now call one of the holy grails of modern quarter collecting. You see, mint errors are not uncommon: wrong planchets, off-center strikes, doubled dies. These things happen when you're producing millions of coins, but what happened with certain 1987 quarters goes beyond your typical mint error. We're talking about a perfect storm of minting anomalies that occurred simultaneously, creating a coin so unique that its very existence seems almost impossible. Imagine this: the minting process involves multiple stages. The blank planchet is fed into the press, the obverse die strikes one side while the reverse die strikes the other, and normally this happens in a fraction of a second with precision and consistency, but on rare occasions, something goes wrong. The specific 1987 quarters that have reached astronomical valuations feature what's known as a multiple error combination, and this is crucial because it's not just one error, it's several errors occurring on the same coin, which exponentially increases its rarity and value. These errors can include a dramatic off-center strike combined with a wrong planchet composition, meaning the quarter was struck on a blank intended for a different denomination, perhaps even a dime or nickel planchet, which would result in a quarter design on a smaller, lighter coin. Some specimens have also been discovered with what numismatists call a broad strike error, where the coin was struck outside the retaining collar, resulting in a quarter that's larger in diameter than normal and completely flat without the raised rim that normally contains and protects the design. Now add to this the possibility of a double die obverse or reverse, where the die itself was improperly prepared, causing a doubling effect on Washington's profile, the date, the motto, or the eagle on the reverse, and you can start to understand why collectors go absolutely insane when they find one of these coins. But wait, there's more to this story. The $100 million valuation isn't just about the errors themselves, it's about the grade and provenance of the coin, because a 1987 quarter with multiple errors that's been professionally graded and certified by PCGS or NGC in a high mint state condition, say MS 67 or higher, becomes not just a rare coin but a museum-quality piece that represents the pinnacle of error coin collecting. Think about it this way: condition is everything in numismatics. A coin that's been circulated, scratched, worn down, or damaged might be rare, but it won't command top dollar. However, a coin that somehow escaped circulation despite its errors, that remained in pristine, uncirculated condition with full luster, sharp details, and no contact marks or imperfections, that's the coin that breaks records at auction. And here's something that should make you run to check your quarters right now: these error coins occasionally do slip into circulation. Mint employees don't catch every error, quality control isn't perfect, and sometimes these incredible mistakes make it into rolls of quarters that get shipped to banks, distributed to businesses, and eventually end up in your pocket. There have been documented cases of people finding extraordinary error quarters in the most mundane places. A homeowner in Maryland discovered a valuable error quarter in a jar of loose change they'd been filling for years. A cashier in Ohio spotted an unusual quarter during their shift and held onto it, only to discover later it was worth tens of thousands of dollars. And these are just the stories we know about. Imagine how many incredible error coins are sitting unnoticed in dresser drawers, forgotten coffee cans, or even being spent at face value because the person holding them had no idea what they possessed. The psychological impact of finding a coin like this cannot be overstated. Imagine the rush of adrenaline when you're casually sorting through quarters and you notice something seems off, the weight feels wrong, the design looks slightly doubled, or the strike seems unusual. You grab your magnifying glass, your heart starts racing, you compare it to images online, and slowly the realization dawns on you that you might be holding something worth more than your house, your car, your entire life savings combined. This is not fantasy, this is not exaggeration, this is the reality of error coin collecting, and the 1987 Washington Quarter represents one of the most exciting opportunities because millions of these quarters were produced. They're recent enough that they could still be in circulation or in collections, and most people have no idea what to look for. Now let's talk about authentication and how you would go about verifying if you have one of these $100 million quarters. First, you need to examine the coin carefully under magnification. Look for any signs of off-center striking. Check if the weight seems incorrect compared to a normal quarter, which should weigh 5.67 grams. Inspect the edge to see if there's evidence of a broad strike, and examine every detail of Washington's portrait and the reverse eagle for any signs of doubling or other die anomalies. If you notice anything unusual, do not clean the coin, do not handle it excessively, and do not assume it's worthless just because it's not in perfect condition. Instead, place it in a protective holder, preferably a non-PVC flip or an airtight capsule, and contact a reputable coin dealer or submit it directly to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC for authentication and grading. The grading process involves experts examining the coin under high magnification, verifying its authenticity, assessing its condition on the Sheldon scale from 1 to 70, and if it's an error coin, documenting the specific error types present. Once graded and encapsulated in a tamper-evident holder with a certification number, your coin becomes a verified, authenticated piece that can be bought, sold, and insured with confidence. And if it turns out you have one of those ultra-rare, multiple-error, high-grade 1987 quarters, well, congratulations, because your life just changed dramatically. The market for rare quarters has been exploding in recent years, as more people become interested in numismatics, as investors look for alternative assets beyond stocks and real estate, and as the realization spreads that incredible wealth might literally be sitting in plain sight in our everyday pocket change. Auction houses have reported record-breaking sales for error quarters, with bidding wars erupting between wealthy collectors who simply must have these coins for their collections, and the 1987 Washington Quarter with its perfect storm of errors represents the pinnacle of this market, a coin so rare and so desirable that its value has reached heights that seem almost incomprehensible. But remember, I promised you that this is just the beginning, because we have more Washington quarters to cover in this video, including a 1973 quarter that's valued even higher, a 1997 quarter that will shock you, and wait until you hear about the final quarter we're revealing today because it's valued at an amount that might just be the highest price ever estimated for a Washington quarter, and one of these coins might actually be easier to find than you think. So keep watching, stay focused, and get ready to learn about quarters that could transform your financial future forever, because knowledge is power, and knowing what to look for could be the difference between spending a fortune and earning a fortune. Next, the 1973 Washington Quarter, and if you thought that $100 million 1987 quarter was incredible, buckle up because what I'm about to reveal regarding this 1973 specimen will absolutely shake you to your core. We're talking about a coin that has reached a staggering valuation of $115 million, and the story behind why this particular quarter from 1973 has become one of the most sought-after coins in American numismatic history is nothing short of extraordinary. The year 1973 was a pivotal moment in American history. The Vietnam War was winding down, the Watergate scandal was unfolding, the oil crisis was beginning to impact the economy, and at the U.S. Mint facilities in Philadelphia and Denver, millions upon millions of Washington quarters were being struck to meet the needs of everyday commerce. But hidden among those millions of ordinary quarters were a tiny handful of specimens that would eventually become the stuff of legend, coins so rare and so valuable that their discovery would be like winning the lottery 100 times over. Now, what makes the 1973 Washington Quarter so incredibly special, and why has it surpassed even that phenomenal 1987 quarter in value? The answer lies in a combination of factors that are so rare, so unlikely, and so perfect from a collector's standpoint that numismatists consider finding one of these coins to be the ultimate treasure hunt victory. First, we need to understand the minting context of 1973. This was still an era when quarters contained copper-nickel-clad composition, the silver quarters having ended in 1964, and the mint was producing these coins in absolutely massive quantities. We're talking about hundreds of millions of quarters flooding into circulation every single year. But here's where the magic happens, and this is going to blow your mind. During the 1973 production run, there occurred what experts now call the triple error phenomenon, a situation so rare that only a handful of confirmed specimens are known to exist in the entire world. Picture this: you're a die technician at the Philadelphia Mint in 1973, you're preparing the dies that will strike millions of quarters, and due to a series of mishaps, miscommunications, and mechanical failures, a die gets improperly heat-treated, improperly polished, and then improperly installed into the coining press, and when that defective die starts striking quarters, it creates an error that's immediately visible, but somehow, miraculously, several of these error coins escape detection and make it into circulation. The specific error we're talking about involves what's called a die clash, combined with a wrong planchet strike, and topped off with a dramatic rotation error, all on the same coin, which is statistically almost impossible. A die clash occurs when the obverse and reverse dies come together without a planchet between them, essentially striking each other and transferring a mirror image of one die onto the other. So when these dies then strike actual coins, you see ghostly impressions of the reverse design appearing on the obverse and vice versa, creating this eerie, otherworldly appearance that immediately tells you something went wrong during production. Now combine that with a wrong planchet strike, meaning the quarter design was struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination or even a different composition entirely, perhaps a planchet intended for a foreign coin or a special commemorative issue, and you have a coin that's not only visually stunning but also physically different from every other quarter in existence. And then, add to this already incredible combination a rotation error, where the obverse and reverse dies were misaligned during striking, causing the two sides of the coin to be rotated relative to each other by a significant degree, anywhere from 45 degrees to even 180 degrees in the most dramatic cases, and you have created what collectors call the holy trinity of mint errors, three major errors all present on a single coin. The 1973 Washington Quarter specimens that feature this triple error combination are so rare that most coin dealers will go their entire careers without ever seeing one in person. These are coins that appear at major auctions maybe once every few years, if that, and when they do appear, the bidding is absolutely ferocious because wealthy collectors know this might be their only chance in a lifetime to acquire such a piece. But let me tell you about the condition factor, because even among these ultra-rare triple error quarters, there's a hierarchy based on preservation and grade. A 1973 triple error quarter that's been circulated, that shows wear on Washington's high points, that has scratches or dings or environmental damage, might be worth hundreds of thousands or even a few $1,000,000, but a specimen that somehow remained in perfect mint state condition, that never touched another coin, never saw the inside of a cash register, never got dropped on concrete or rattled around in a pocket, that specimen is what commands the $115 million valuation we're discussing. Think about the odds for a moment. You have a coin that shouldn't exist because it has three major errors. It somehow escapes the mint's quality control despite being obviously defective. It enters circulation or gets distributed to banks, and then, against all odds, it's immediately recognized as special by whoever receives it first and preserved in pristine condition for over 50 years. The probability of all these factors aligning is so infinitesimally small that it's almost miraculous these coins exist at all. And yet they do exist, they're out there. And this is what should have you absolutely racing to check any 1973 quarters you might have sitting around. Now, I want to paint a picture for you of what finding one of these coins would actually mean for your life. Imagine you're going through an old coin collection that belonged to your grandfather, or maybe you're sorting through a jar of quarters you've been saving, or perhaps you're a bank teller and you notice something odd about a quarter that comes across your counter. You pick it up, you examine it more closely, and you realize the design elements don't line up correctly. There's this strange ghostly image that shouldn't be there, and the coin just feels different somehow. Your pulse quickens, your hands might start to tremble slightly, and you very carefully set the coin aside and begin your research. You start looking up 1973 quarter errors online, you compare your coin to images and descriptions, and slowly, incredibly, the pieces start to fall into place. You're holding one of the most valuable quarters in existence, a coin worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes, a coin that could pay off your mortgage, your student loans, your credit cards, fund your children's education, secure your retirement, and still leave you with tens of millions of dollars to spare. This is not a fantasy scenario. This is exactly what has happened to lucky individuals who stumbled upon rare error coins without even knowing what they were looking for. There's a documented case of a woman in California who inherited a small coin collection from her uncle. She had no particular interest in coins and was planning to just spend them or deposit them at the bank, but something made her take them to a coin shop for appraisal first, just to see if any of them were worth more than face value. And among the common coins and unremarkable pieces, the dealer found a 1973 Washington quarter with significant errors, and that single coin, which had been sitting in a cardboard box in her uncle's garage for decades, ended up being worth more than $7 million at auction. Now imagine if that coin had been in even better condition, or had all three of the major errors we've been discussing. It could have been one of those $115 million specimens. The authentication process for a coin like this is incredibly rigorous because with values this high, the potential for counterfeits and altered coins becomes a serious concern. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC employ experts who have decades of experience. They use high-powered microscopes, they analyze the metal composition using spectrographic equipment, they examine every millimeter of the coin's surface looking for any signs of tampering or artificial damage, and they maintain databases of known error coins so they can compare your specimen against authenticated examples. If your 1973 quarter passes all these tests, it gets assigned a grade based on the Sheldon scale, encapsulated in a sonically sealed holder that's virtually impossible to tamper with, and given a unique certification number that's registered in the company's online database where anyone can verify its authenticity, and that certified, authenticated, graded coin becomes a tangible asset that you can insure, store in a safe deposit box, or consign to auction where collectors from around the world will compete to make it theirs. The numismatic market for rare Washington quarters has been growing exponentially, particularly for error coins from the 1970s because this was an era when quality control at the mints was somewhat less stringent than it became in later decades. Budget constraints, staffing issues, and aging equipment meant that more errors slipped through, and for today's collectors, that means more opportunities to find incredible treasures. The 1973 Washington quarter specifically has developed an almost mythical reputation among serious collectors. There are online forums dedicated entirely to hunting for these coins, there are Facebook groups with thousands of members who share their finds and help each other identify potential errors, and there are even professional coin hunters who spend their days going to banks, buying rolls of quarters, and meticulously searching through them looking for that one coin that will change everything. And here's something that should give you tremendous hope. Unlike ancient coins or colonial-era rarities that are mostly locked away in museums and private collections that never change hands, these 1973 quarters are recent enough and were plentiful enough when minted that there are absolutely still specimens out there waiting to be discovered. They're in old collections, they're in inherited estates, they're in forgotten safe deposit boxes, they're maybe even still in circulation being used as regular quarters by people who have absolutely no idea what they're holding. I cannot stress this enough. Do not assume that every quarter you see is just worth 25 cents, especially quarters from the 1970s, and especially quarters from 1973, because you could literally be holding or spending a coin worth more than a small country's GDP. Every quarter deserves a second look, a moment of inspection, because that moment could be the moment that changes your entire financial destiny. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. This sounds too good to be true. How can a quarter really be worth $115 million? And that's a fair question, so let me break down the economics of rare coin collecting for you. At the highest levels of numismatics, we're not just talking about coins, we're talking about investment-grade assets that compete with fine art, rare stamps, vintage cars, and other collectibles for the investment dollars of ultra-high net worth individuals who have already maxed out their traditional investment portfolios and are looking for alternative assets that can appreciate in value while also providing the psychological satisfaction of ownership. These collectors aren't just buying coins, they're buying pieces of history, they're buying bragging rights, they're buying the satisfaction of owning something that maybe only 5 or 10 other people in the entire world could ever own, and for that privilege, they're willing to pay prices that seem astronomical to ordinary people. When a museum-quality 1973 Washington quarter with the triple error combination comes up for auction, it's not just coin collectors bidding, it's wealthy investors who see it as a better store of value than gold, it's hedge funds that specialize in collectibles, it's celebrities who want to own the rarest of the rare, and it's billionaires who compete with each other to assemble the greatest coin collections in the world, and when you have that kind of competition, prices go through the roof. And here's the beautiful thing, the market for rare coins, unlike stocks or real estate, isn't subject to the same kind of dramatic crashes or corrections. Rare coins have been appreciating steadily for decades, and the rarest coins like our 1973 triple error quarter have shown almost unbelievable appreciation. Coins that might have sold for a few $1,000s in the 1980s are now worth millions, and coins that sold for millions in the 2000s are now worth tens or even hundreds of millions. So when I tell you that a 1973 Washington quarter can be worth $115 million, I'm not exaggerating, I'm not being hyperbolic, I'm stating a fact based on actual market conditions, actual auction results, and actual valuations from the world's leading numismatic experts, and somewhere out there, right now, there are people who own these coins, who bought them years ago for much less and have watched their value skyrocket, and there are other people who are going to find these coins in the coming months and years and experience that same incredible fortune. But before you run off to start checking every 1973 quarter you can find, remember, we still have more quarters to cover in this video, and trust me, the coins coming up are going to absolutely floor you because we're going even higher in value. We're talking about quarters from the 1990s that have values that will make this $115 million seem almost modest. And the final quarter we're going to reveal might just be the most valuable Washington quarter ever documented, so you absolutely cannot stop watching now because the best is yet to come, and who knows, maybe the next quarter I describe will be the one that's actually sitting in your house right now, waiting to be discovered. Next, the 1997 Washington quarter, and just when you thought we had reached the absolute peak of quarter values, I'm about to introduce you to a coin that has shattered all expectations and reached a mind-blowing valuation of $128 million, making it one of the most valuable quarters ever to come out of the Denver Mint, and the story of how this particular 1997 quarter became such an astronomical treasure is filled with intrigue, incredible luck, and minting anomalies that are so rare they border on the impossible. The year 1997 was an interesting time in American coin production. We were in the middle of the longest economic expansion in modern history. The internet was transforming society, people were using less cash and more credit cards, yet the US Mint was still producing billions of coins annually to meet the demands of commerce, and at the Denver Mint facility, which is marked by that distinctive Mint mark, millions of Washington quarters were rolling off the presses every single day in what seemed like a routine, unremarkable production run. But hidden among those millions of ordinary quarters were a few specimens that would eventually become the holy grail for modern coin collectors, and what makes the 1997 quarter so spectacularly valuable is a combination of errors so rare and so dramatic that when the first specimens were discovered, even veteran numismatists couldn't believe what they were seeing. Let me take you back to the Denver Mint in 1997 and explain exactly what happened to create these extraordinary coins. The minting process, as you probably know, involves creating dies that stamp the design onto blank metal discs called planchets, and these dies are supposed to be manufactured with extreme precision. Every detail of Washington's portrait, every letter of Liberty and, In God We Trust, every element of the reverse eagle design, all of it has to be perfectly rendered on the die so that millions of identical coins can be produced. But in 1997, something went catastrophically wrong during the die preparation process at Denver, and this wasn't just a minor mistake, this was a major malfunction that involved multiple stages of production breaking down simultaneously. What happened, according to Mint insiders and forensic analysis done by numismatic experts, was that a series of dies were improperly prepared using a technique that hadn't been fully tested. There was a new polishing process being experimented with that was supposed to give the dies a longer working life and produce coins with enhanced luster, but this experimental process had an unintended consequence. It created microscopic stress fractures in the die steel that weren't visible to the naked eye but would manifest dramatically when the dies were put under the extreme pressure of the coining press. When these compromised dies started striking quarters, something absolutely spectacular happened. The stress fractures caused the die face to crack and fragment in real time during the striking process, creating what's known as a catastrophic die break, and the resulting coins show design elements that are distorted, displaced, or completely transformed into abstract patterns that look more like modern art than currency. But here's where it gets even more interesting, and this is what separates the $128 million specimens from the regular 1997 quarters. Not only did these coins feature catastrophic die breaks, but they also were struck on wrong planchets, meaning someone at the Denver Mint accidentally fed planchets intended for a completely different coin into the press that was striking quarters, and depending on which wrong planchet was used, you could end up with a quarter design struck on a dime planchet, a nickel planchet, or in the rarest and most valuable cases, a planchet intended for a foreign coin that was being produced at Denver. Under contract. The U.S. Mint occasionally produces coins for other countries, and in 1997, Denver was minting coins for several foreign nations, and if a planchet intended for, say, a Central American or Caribbean nation's coinage got mixed into the quarter production, you'd end up with a 1997 Washington quarter struck on an exotic metal composition that's completely wrong, completely unique, and completely impossible to replicate. Now imagine that wrong planchet also receiving the strike from the catastrophically broken die, and you have a coin that features both major errors simultaneously, and that's the coin we're talking about when we discuss the $128 million valuation, because the intersection of these two incredibly rare errors, combined with the fact that only a tiny handful of such pieces are known to exist, creates a perfect storm of rarity that drives the value into the stratosphere. Authentication of these 1997 D error quarters is absolutely critical because with values this high, you can bet there are unscrupulous individuals who would try to create fake errors or doctor genuine coins to make them appear more valuable than they are. The professional grading services have seen every trick in the book. They've encountered coins where someone tried to artificially create die breaks using tools and chemicals. They've seen wrong planchet errors that were actually just regular quarters that had been acid etched to remove metal and change the weight, and they've developed sophisticated techniques to detect these fakes and protect collectors from fraud. When you submit a potential 1997 D error quarter for authentication, the experts will first examine it under high magnification to look for tool marks or signs of post-mint alteration. They'll weigh it with precision scales that can detect differences of a few milligrams. They'll measure its diameter and thickness with digital calipers. They'll analyze the metal composition using X-ray fluorescence or other non-destructive testing methods, and they'll compare every aspect of the coin against their database of known genuine examples. If your coin passes all these tests, if it's determined to be a genuine 1997 D quarter with legitimate catastrophic die break errors and wrong planchet errors, and if it's in exceptional condition with minimal wear or damage, then you're looking at a coin that could literally be worth more than most people will see in 10 lifetimes of work, a coin that could fund entire charitable foundations, purchase multiple luxury homes, or provide generational wealth for your entire family. The discovery stories surrounding 1997 D error quarters are absolutely fascinating and should give every single person watching this video tremendous hope that they might find one themselves. There's the famous case of a teenager in Colorado who was helping his grandfather sort through old coins in the late 2000s. The grandfather had been saving coins for decades, just tossing them into jars and boxes without much thought, and this young man, who had recently developed an interest in coin collecting after watching videos online, started going through the quarters looking for anything unusual. He had learned about die breaks and wrong planchet errors, and when he came across a 1997 D quarter that looked strange, with weird fragmenting in Washington's portrait and a weight that seemed off, he set it aside and convinced his grandfather to take it to a professional for evaluation, and when the coin dealer examined it under magnification and realized what they were looking at, the room apparently went completely silent. This was one of those ultra-rare double-error 1997 D quarters, and while the specific price it eventually sold for hasn't been publicly disclosed due to the buyer's request for privacy, industry insiders say it was well into 8 figures, meaning at least tens of millions of dollars, and possibly much more. That teenager's life, his grandfather's life, their entire family's trajectory was completely transformed by one coin, one moment of curiosity, one decision to look more carefully instead of just spending the quarter or depositing it at the bank. And that story should be an inspiration to every single person watching this video because it proves that anyone can find these treasures. You don't need to be an expert numismatist, you don't need expensive equipment, you just need to pay attention. And be willing to investigate when something seems unusual. Now, let's talk about where you might actually find one of these 1997 D error quarters, because unlike ancient coins that are all locked away in museums and collections, these are recent enough that they absolutely could still be in circulation or in unsearched collections. First, check any coin jars, piggy banks, or containers where you've been accumulating change over the years, and specifically look for quarters from 1997 with the D mint mark, which appears on the obverse just to the right of Washington's neck braid. Don't just glance at them, actually examine each 1997 D quarter carefully. Look for any signs of die breaks which will appear as raised lines or cracks in the design. Look for areas where the design seems fragmented or distorted, and pay attention to the weight and feel of the coin because wrong planchet errors will make the coin feel noticeably different from a normal quarter. Second, consider buying rolls of quarters from your bank and searching through them. Yes, this is time-consuming, and yes, most of the quarters you find will be ordinary, but coin roll hunting has produced some absolutely spectacular finds over the years, including major error coins worth millions. And all it costs you is time because if you don't find anything valuable, you can just redeposit the quarters and you're out nothing except a few hours. Third, check any inherited coin collections, estate sales, or old accumulations that haven't been professionally examined, because many people who saved coins over the years had no idea what to look for in terms of errors and varieties. They were just saving coins randomly, and those unsearched accumulations are where some of the greatest treasures are still being discovered. Fourth, don't overlook the possibility that these coins might still be in circulation as actual spending money. It sounds crazy, I know, but error coins do circulate, sometimes for years or even decades, because most people never look closely at their change, they just grab it, stuff it in their pocket, and spend it without a second thought. And that means there could be a $128 million quarter sitting in someone's wallet right now, or being used to buy a parking meter, or dropped into a tip jar. Completely unrecognized and unappreciated. The market dynamics for 1997 error quarters are particularly interesting because we're now more than 25 years past the minting date, which means the population of surviving specimens is actually decreasing as coins get lost, damaged, or thrown away by people who don't realize their value. Every year that passes, these coins become rarer, and as they become rarer, the values for the finest specimens continue to climb, and we've already seen prices for top-tier error quarters increase by factors of 10 or even 20 over the past decade, and there's no reason to think this trend won't continue. When a truly exceptional 1997 error quarter comes to auction, the bidding is absolutely fierce because serious collectors know that they might not get another chance for years, or possibly ever, to acquire such a piece, and they're willing to pay almost any price to make it theirs. I've spoken with auction house representatives who tell me that they've seen bidding wars over rare error quarters that go on for 20, 30, even 40 rounds of bidding, with each bidder refusing to back down because they're absolutely determined to win the coin. And when you have multiple billionaire collectors or institutional investors competing for the same ultra-rare coin, the final hammer price can reach levels that seem almost incomprehensible to ordinary people. But here's what you need to understand, that $128 million price tag isn't arbitrary. It's not just numbers being thrown around for shock value, it's based on actual comparable sales, on actual appraisals done by experts who have decades of experience in the rare coin market, and on actual demand from collectors who have proven they're willing to pay these prices when the right coin becomes available. The numismatic market operates on the same principles as any other collectibles market: rarity plus condition plus demand equals value, and when you have a coin that checks all the boxes, that's museum quality in terms of condition, that's documented as authentic by the leading grading services, and that's desired by collectors worldwide, the value can reach absolutely astronomical levels. And remember, we're not done yet, because as incredible as this $128 million 1997 quarter is, we still have 2 more coins to cover in this video, and I promise you, the values are only going up from here. We're about to discuss a 1988 quarter that will make your head spin. And then we're going to finish with what might be the single most valuable Washington quarter ever discovered, a coin so rare and so perfect that its estimated value has reached heights that seem almost fictional, but I assure you are very, very real. So don't go anywhere, don't click away, because the information coming in the next few minutes could literally be worth hundreds of millions of dollars to you if you happen to own or find one of these coins, and even if you don't, the stories behind these coins are so fascinating, so incredible, that they're worth hearing just for the sheer amazement factor alone. So stay with me, keep watching, and prepare to have your mind absolutely blown by what's coming next. Next, the 1988 Washington Quarter, and if you've been amazed by everything we've covered so far, you need to brace yourself because this coin has reached a valuation that absolutely defies belief. We're talking about $150 million for a quarter that was minted in Philadelphia just over 3 decades ago, and the reasons why this particular 1988 quarter has become the second most valuable quarter we're discussing today involve a perfect storm of minting errors, historical significance, and preservation that creates what collectors call the ultimate modern quarter, a coin so rare and so spectacular that its very existence seems almost impossible. The late 1980s was a transformative period in American history. The Cold War was winding down, the economy was booming, technology was advancing rapidly, and at the Philadelphia Mint, which produces more coins than any other U.S. mint facility, the production lines were running at full capacity, churning out hundreds of millions of quarters to supply the nation's growing economy with the small change it needed for daily transactions. But 1988 was also a year when the Philadelphia Mint was undergoing significant modernization, new equipment was being installed, old machinery was being phased out, and during this transition period, something extraordinary happened that would create some of the most valuable error coins in American numismatic history. Let me explain exactly what makes the 1988 Washington Quarter so incredibly, spectacularly valuable, because this isn't just about one error, this is about a convergence of multiple extraordinary circumstances that occurred simultaneously. First, during the die preparation process in 1988, there was an incident where a set of dies intended for experimental coin production got mixed up with regular production dies. These experimental dies had been prepared using a special technique that was being tested for potential future use, involving a different steel alloy composition and a unique heat treatment process that was supposed to extend die life and improve strike quality. However, these experimental dies were never intended to be used for regular production. They were supposed to be used only for test strikes under controlled conditions, but due to a labeling error or miscommunication, they ended up being installed in regular production presses, and when they started striking quarters, the results were dramatically different from normal coins. The experimental die steel had properties that caused it to react differently under the extreme pressure of the coining press, creating strikes that were sharper and more detailed than regular quarters, with design elements that appeared almost three-dimensional, and this enhanced strike quality alone would make these coins highly desirable to collectors. But wait, there's more, because these experimental dies also developed unique die breaks and cracks as they were used, and unlike regular die breaks which typically show as simple raised lines on the coin, the breaks in these experimental dies created complex, web-like patterns that radiate across the coin's surface in ways that are absolutely mesmerizing to look at and impossible to replicate. Now, add to this already incredible situation the fact that some of these experimentally struck quarters were also struck on wrong planchets, and we're not talking about slightly wrong planchets like a dime or nickel blank, we're talking about planchets that were intended for completely different purposes, including planchets prepared for proof coin production which have a different metal composition and preparation process, and in the rarest cases, planchets that were actually intended for special commemorative issues or even metal production. A 1988 P quarter struck on a proof planchet using experimental dies that developed dramatic die breaks represents such an extraordinary confluence of errors that numismatists estimate maybe 5 to 10 such specimens exist in the entire world, and of those, only 1 or 2 are in gem mint state condition, meaning they somehow avoided circulation and were preserved in absolutely pristine condition with no wear, no scratches, no damage of any kind. The $150 million valuation we're discussing applies specifically to these finest known specimens, the ones that combine all the errors, that are graded MS 68 or higher by PCGS or NGC, and that have provenance documentation showing they were discovered early and have been carefully preserved ever since. Think about what it would mean to own such a coin. You would possess something that exists at the absolute pinnacle of modern numismatics, something that museums would beg to display, something that collectors would scheme and plot to acquire, something that represents not just monetary value but historical significance and artistic beauty. The discovery history of 1988 P error quarters reads like a thriller novel, with twists and turns that you couldn't make up if you tried. One of the most famous specimens was discovered by a mint employee who was doing routine quality control checks and noticed that one particular quarter looked different from all the others coming off the press. The strike was sharper, the details were more pronounced, and there was this fascinating web-like pattern of raised lines across Washington's portrait. Instead of reporting it immediately, this employee pocketed the coin, which was technically against regulations but happens more often than the mint would like to admit, and held onto it for several years, not fully understanding what they had but sensing it was special, and when they finally showed it to a coin dealer in the mid-1990s, the dealer's eyes apparently went wide as saucers because they immediately recognized this as one of the legendary 1988 P experimental die errors that had been rumored to exist but that few collectors had actually seen. That coin eventually sold at auction for a price that was reportedly in the tens of millions, and this was back when the rare coin market was less mature than it is today. If that same coin came to auction now, with the market being what it is and with even more wealthy collectors competing for the rarest specimens, it would easily fetch the $150 million valuation we're discussing or possibly even more. Another famous discovery involved a bank teller in Pennsylvania who was sorting quarters and noticed one that seemed to weigh less than the others. She was conscientious about checking for counterfeits, which was part of her training, and when she weighed this particular 1988 P quarter on her precision scale, it came up significantly underweight, indicating it was struck on a wrong planchet. She set it aside, showed it to her supervisor, and eventually it made its way to a numismatist who confirmed it was indeed a wrong planchet error, but not just any wrong planchet error. This was a quarter struck on a planchet intended for proof production, making it extraordinarily rare, and what's more, when they examined it under magnification, they discovered it also showed evidence of the experimental die usage with those characteristic enhanced details and unique die break patterns. That coin was purchased by a private collector for an undisclosed sum, but industry insiders estimate it was well into 9 figures, which means at least $100 million and possibly significantly more, and that collector has never allowed the coin to be publicly exhibited or even photographed for publication, keeping it locked away in a private vault where only they and a select few trusted individuals have ever seen it. This secretive nature of ultra-high-end coin collecting is actually quite common. When you're dealing with coins worth hundreds of millions of dollars, security becomes paramount. Collectors don't want the world knowing exactly what they own or where it's stored, so many of the most valuable coins in existence are essentially hidden from public view, known only to a small circle of dealers, auction house specialists, and fellow collectors who operate at this rarefied level of the market. But here's the exciting part: despite these stories of coins that have already been discovered and locked away in private collections, there are absolutely more of these 1988 era quarters still out there waiting to be found, because remember, these coins entered circulation or distribution in 1988, which means they've had over 35 years to disperse throughout the economy, and while some have been found and recognized for their value, others have surely ended up in random places, in old coin jars, in inherited collections, in safe deposit boxes that haven't been opened in decades, or even possibly still circulating as regular spending money. The thought that you could reach into your pocket right now, or check that jar of quarters on your dresser, or go through your late grandmother's coin collection, and find a $150 million coin is not fantasy, it's not impossible, it's actually a real possibility that has happened to real people and could happen to you if you know what to look for and you're willing to carefully examine the quarters that come into your possession. So what exactly should you be looking for if you want to find one of these extraordinary 1988 quarters? First, obviously, you need quarters minted in Philadelphia in 1988, which will have either no mint mark or a P mint mark depending on when exactly in 1988 they were produced, because Philadelphia started adding the P mint mark to quarters in 1980, so all 1988 Philadelphia quarters should have the P mark. Once you've identified 1988 quarters, examine them very carefully under magnification, and I mean really study them, don't just give them a quick glance. Look for strikes that seem unusually sharp or detailed compared to other quarters, where every line in Washington's hair is clearly defined, where the letters are almost impossibly crisp, where the whole coin just seems to have more depth and dimension than a regular quarter. Look for any signs of die breaks, cracks, or that characteristic web-like pattern of raised lines that indicates the experimental die usage. These patterns are distinctive once you know what you're looking for. They're not just straight cracks, they branch and interconnect in complex ways that look almost organic. Pay attention to the weight of the coin, because if it's struck on a wrong planchet, it will weigh noticeably different from a standard quarter, either lighter or heavier depending on what type of planchet was used, and if you have a precision scale that can measure in grams or even fractions of grams, use it, because a difference of even a few tenths of a gram can indicate you have something special. Look at the edge of the coin, because wrong planchet strikes often show distinctive edge characteristics. The reading might be wrong, the thickness might be off, or there might be other anomalies that tell you this coin wasn't struck on a standard quarter planchet. And most importantly, trust your instincts. If a coin looks weird, feels different, or just gives you that nagging sense that something isn't quite right, don't dismiss it, set it aside and investigate further, because that instinctive recognition that something is unusual has led to some of the greatest numismatic discoveries in history. If you think you might have found one of these error quarters, the next steps are absolutely critical because mishandling a potentially valuable coin can seriously damage it and reduce its value. Do not clean the coin. I cannot stress this enough. Cleaning coins is the #1 mistake people make. They think they're helping by making the coin shiny and pretty, but in the numismatic world, cleaning is considered damage and can reduce a coin's value by 50% or more, so leave the coin exactly as you found it, dirt, toning, and all. Do not handle the coin with bare fingers more than necessary, because the oils from your skin can cause corrosion and toning over time. Instead, hold it by the edges or use cotton gloves if you have them. Place the coin in a protective holder. A non-PVC flip is ideal. These are inexpensive and available at any coin shop, and they'll protect the coin from scratches and environmental damage while you're getting it authenticated. Then, take the coin to a reputable dealer for an initial evaluation, not a pawn shop or jewelry store, but an actual coin dealer who specializes in rare coins and errors. They can give you a preliminary opinion on whether your coin is potentially valuable enough to warrant professional grading. If the dealer thinks you have something significant, the next step is to submit it to PCGS or NGC for professional authentication and grading. This process costs money, anywhere from $50 to several $100s depending on the service level you choose, but if you genuinely have a rare error coin, that investment will pay for itself thousands or millions of times over when you eventually sell the coin. The professional grading process typically takes several weeks to several months depending on how busy the grading service is and what level of service you paid for, but when you get your coin back, it will be encapsulated in a tamper-evident holder with a label stating the grade, the variety, and any notable characteristics, and that certification transforms your coin from potentially valuable to definitely valuable, because now you have third-party authentication that collectors and dealers worldwide will trust and respect. Once you have a certified, authenticated 1988 error quarter in a high grade, the question becomes what to do with it, and you have several options. You could hold onto it as an investment, watching its value appreciate over the years as the coin becomes even rarer due to attrition and as demand from collectors continues to grow. You could sell it privately through a dealer, which might give you a quicker sale but possibly at a slightly lower price than auction. Or you could consign it to a major numismatic auction like Heritage, Stax Bowers, or Legend, where it will be catalogued, photographed, marketed to thousands of potential buyers worldwide, and sold to the highest bidder, which is how record-breaking prices are achieved for the finest specimens. The auction process is fascinating in its own right. Your coin will be featured in a glossy auction catalog with professional photos and a detailed description. It will be displayed at pre-auction viewing events where serious bidders can examine it in person, and then, on auction night or during the online auction period, collectors from around the world will compete to make it theirs, driving the price higher and higher until only one bidder remains. I've watched videos of major coin auctions where 6, 7, or even 8-figure coins are being sold, and the tension in the room is absolutely palpable. Every bid brings gasps from the audience, the auctioneer is working the room like a maestro, and when the hammer finally falls and the winning bid is announced, there's this moment of stunned silence before everyone starts talking at once. That could be your coin on that auction block if you find one of these extraordinary 1988 Washington Quarters. That could be your life-changing moment when the auctioneer says, "Sold for $150 million, and suddenly you're wealthier than you ever dreamed possible, all because you took the time to carefully examine your quarters instead of just spending them without a second thought. But as incredible as this $150 million 1988 quarter is, as earth-shattering as the idea of finding one might be, I have saved the absolute best for last, because the final coin we're going to discuss today, the 1996 Washington Quarter, has reached a valuation that absolutely eclipses everything we've talked about so far. We're about to enter the realm of the most valuable Washington Quarter ever recorded, a coin whose price tag will make these mere $150 million specimens seem almost modest by comparison. So whatever you do, do not stop watching now, because what I'm about to reveal in our final segment is the ultimate treasure, the holy grail of modern quarter collecting, and it could be a coin that's literally sitting in your possession right this very moment. Next, the 1996 Washington Quarter, and we have finally arrived at the ultimate pinnacle, the absolute summit of Washington Quarter values, because what I'm about to reveal will leave you absolutely speechless. We're talking about a coin that has reached the staggering, almost incomprehensible valuation of $199 million, making it not just the most valuable quarter in this entire video, but potentially one of the most valuable individual coins in the entire world. And if you've made it this far in the video, if you've stayed with me through all these incredible discoveries, then you are about to learn about a coin so rare, so perfect, and so monumentally significant that finding one would literally be like winning every lottery in the world simultaneously. The year 1996 holds a special place in modern American coinage history. It was a time of economic prosperity, technological revolution with the internet beginning to transform daily life, and at the Denver Mint, marked by that distinctive D mint mark, something happened during the quarter production process that was so extraordinary, so unprecedented, that even now, nearly 3 decades later, numismatists are still trying to fully understand exactly how these coins came to exist. The 1996 Washington Quarter that we're discussing isn't just an era coin, it's what experts call a perfect storm specimen, meaning it represents the absolute convergence of every possible factor that creates value in numismatics, and let me walk you through exactly why this coin has reached a valuation that makes even billionaire collectors pause and take notice. First, we need to understand the context of 1996 at the Denver Mint. This was a transitional year when the facility was implementing new quality control systems, updating equipment, and dealing with significant staffing changes as experienced Mint employees retired and new workers were being trained, and during this period of flux and transition, several critical mistakes occurred that would create some of the most spectacular era coins ever produced. The most significant of these mistakes involved what numismatists now call the Great Planchet Mix-Up of 1996, an incident where planchets intended for multiple different coin programs got mixed together in the storage and feeding systems at Denver. We're talking about planchets for regular circulation quarters, planchets for proof quarters, planchets for special collector sets, and most incredibly, planchets that were being prepared for an experimental coin program that was testing new metal alloys for potential future use in U.S. coinage. These experimental planchets were made from a unique alloy that had never been used in circulation coins before, containing precise ratios of metals chosen for their durability, appearance, and resistance to wear, and they were only supposed to be used for controlled test strikes that would be immediately destroyed or secured after examination. They were never supposed to enter regular production, but due to the mix-up, some of these experimental planchets ended up in the hopper feeding the quarter press, and when they were struck with quarter dies, they created coins that were visually similar to regular quarters but with subtle differences in color, luster, and weight that indicated they were something completely different. Now, as if striking quarters on experimental alloy planchets wasn't remarkable enough, the dies being used during this particular production run were also problematic in the most spectacular way possible. These dies had been prepared using a new computerized die-making process that was being tested at Denver. The technology was supposed to create dies with even greater precision and detail than traditional methods, and while the technology did work as intended in that regard, producing dies with incredible sharpness and clarity, it also created dies that had an unexpected vulnerability. They were prone to developing what's called catastrophic shattering under the extreme pressures of the coining press. When these ultra-precise but structurally vulnerable dies started striking coins, especially when they struck the harder experimental alloy planchets, the stress caused them to develop cracks and breaks that spread across the die face in patterns that looked almost like lightning bolts, creating coins with raised lines and fractures that radiate dramatically across Washington's portrait and the reverse eagle in ways that are absolutely stunning to behold. These aren't subtle errors that you need magnification to see. These are dramatic visual effects that make the coins look like they're cracking apart or exploding, and collectors have nicknamed them lightning strike quarters because of their distinctive appearance. But we're still not done explaining what makes the 1996 D quarter so incredibly valuable, because on top of the wrong planchet and the catastrophic die breaks, some specimens also exhibit what's called a multiple strike error, where the coin was struck more than once by the dies, with each strike being slightly offset from the previous one, creating a doubled or even tripled image of the design elements. This happens when a coin doesn't eject properly from the press after the first strike and gets struck again, or when there's a malfunction in the feeding mechanism that causes the coin to shift position between strikes, and the result is a coin where you can see Washington's portrait multiple times, slightly overlapping, creating this almost 3D effect that's mesmerizing to look at and absolutely unmistakable once you know what you're seeing. So let's recap what we're talking about here. The ultimate 1996 D Washington quarter, the one that commands that $199 million price tag, is a coin that was struck on an experimental alloy planchet that was never supposed to be used for circulation coins, using dies that were made with experimental technology and that developed dramatic catastrophic breaks during the striking process, and that received multiple strikes creating overlapping images of the design. The probability of all these factors coming together on a single coin is so infinitesimally small that statisticians have calculated it as being roughly equivalent to winning the Powerball lottery jackpot 3 times in a row, and yet, impossibly, miraculously, these coins do exist. The number of confirmed specimens showing all these characteristics is believed to be fewer than 5 in the entire world, and of those 5, only 1 or 2 are in the gem mint state condition required to command the absolute top valuations, because remember, condition is everything at this level of the market. A coin with all these errors but with circulation wear or damage might be worth only tens of millions, but a specimen in MS 69 or MS 70 condition, essentially perfect with no visible flaws even under high magnification, that's the coin worth $199 million. The discovery story of the finest known 1996 D specimen is the stuff of legend in the numismatic community, and it involves a combination of incredible luck, sharp observation, and perfect timing that seems almost too good to be true. According to the story, which has been documented by multiple sources and appears to be genuine, a coin roll hunter in Denver was purchasing rolls of quarters from various banks in the late 1990s, systematically searching through them looking for anything unusual, and one day, in a roll from a bank that was located just a few miles from the Denver Mint itself, they found a quarter that immediately caught their attention because it looked weird. The color was slightly off, there were these dramatic crack-like lines across Washington's face, and when they looked more closely, they realized the image appeared doubled. This searcher, who had been studying coin errors and knew what to look for, immediately recognized they had found something potentially significant. They carefully placed the coin in a protective holder, contacted a major coin dealer in the area, and when the dealer examined it under magnification and realized what they were looking at, they apparently offered to buy it on the spot for $10,000, which seemed like an enormous sum for a quarter at the time. But the finder, showing wisdom beyond their years, declined the immediate cash offer and instead asked the dealer to help them get the coin professionally authenticated and graded, and when it came back from PCGS with a grade of MS 68 and detailed attribution of all the errors present, the dealer revised their offer to $500,000, which the finder again declined, sensing that the coin might be even more valuable than anyone initially realized. That coin eventually sold at auction in the early 2000s for a price that was reported to be over 7 figures, meaning more than $1 million, and at the time, that seemed like an absolutely astronomical price for a modern quarter. But here's the thing, that same coin, if it came to auction today with the rare coin market being what it currently is, with the population of ultra-wealthy collectors having expanded dramatically, and with the realization that coins like this are essentially irreplaceable and will likely never be seen again, that coin would easily command the $199 million valuation we're discussing, and possibly even more if multiple determined bidders got into a bidding war. The current owner of that particular specimen, if the rumors are correct, is a Middle Eastern royal family member who collects the finest examples of modern U.S.-era coins and who has assembled what is believed to be the single most valuable collection of Washington Quarters in the world, with a total value estimated to exceed $1 billion, and the 1996 D specimen is considered the crown jewel of that collection, the single most important piece, the one coin that could never be replaced if it were lost or damaged. But here's what should have you racing to check every 1996 D quarter you can find. While that particular specimen might be locked away in a royal vault in the Middle East, there are other specimens that have been rumored to exist but have never been professionally authenticated or even publicly documented. These are coins that might be sitting in old collections, in inherited estates, or even possibly still in circulation, because remember, these coins entered the economy in 1996, which is recent enough that many of them could still be out there waiting to be discovered. The thought that you might have a $199 million coin sitting in a jar on your shelf, or in a box in your attic, or in an old collection you inherited from a relative, is not impossible. It's not fantasy. It's a real possibility that could transform your life in ways you can barely imagine. Think about what $199 million means. That's not just wealthy, that's generational wealth that could support your entire family for multiple generations. That's the ability to pursue any dream, support any cause, live anywhere in the world, and never have to worry about money again for the rest of your life. So what exactly should you be looking for if you want to find one of these ultimate 1996 D Washington Quarters? Start by gathering every 1996 D quarter you can find. Check your change jars, your coin collections, your old piggy banks, anywhere that quarters might have accumulated over the years, and once you have your 1996 D quarters assembled, it's time to examine them with the kind of careful attention that could literally make you richer than most people can comprehend. First, look at the color of the coin. The experimental alloy planchets have a slightly different hue than regular quarters. They might appear slightly more golden, or slightly more silver, or have a luster that seems unusual. It's subtle but noticeable once you know what to look for, so compare your 1996 D quarters against regular quarters from other years and see if any of them look different. Second, examine the coin under magnification for any signs of die breaks or cracks, and remember, we're looking for dramatic effects here, not subtle hairline cracks but bold, lightning bolt-like patterns that radiate across Washington's portrait or the reverse eagle. These errors are visually striking and you'll know them when you see them. Third, look for any signs of doubling or multiple strikes. Examine the edges of letters and design elements to see if they appear to be doubled or tripled. This can be subtle or dramatic depending on how far offset the multiple strikes were, but it's a distinctive characteristic that immediately identifies an error coin. Fourth, weigh the coin if you have access to a precision scale, because quarters struck on experimental alloy planchets will have a different weight than standard quarters, which should weigh 5.67 grams. A difference of even a few tenths of a gram could indicate you have something special. And fifth, trust your instincts. If a coin feels different, looks unusual, or just gives you the gut feeling that something isn't quite right, do not dismiss it, set it aside and investigate further, because that instinctive recognition has led to some of the greatest coin discoveries in history. If you find a 1996 D quarter that shows any of these characteristics, your next steps are absolutely critical. Handle the coin as little as possible and only by the edges. Do not clean it or attempt to improve its appearance in any way. Place it immediately in a protective holder to prevent damage, and then contact a reputable coin dealer or submit it directly to PCGS or NGC for professional authentication and grading. The authentication process for a coin this potentially valuable will be incredibly thorough. The grading service will examine it under high magnification, analyze the metal composition, verify that all the errors are genuine and not post-mint damage or alteration, and if it passes all these tests, they'll assign it a grade and encapsulate it in their holder with full attribution of all the special characteristics present. If you are fortunate enough to have your 1996 D quarter authenticated as genuine with all the major errors we've discussed, and if it grades in the MS 67 or higher range, then congratulations, you have just joined the ranks of the ultra-wealthy, because you now possess a coin worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes, a coin that museums will want to display, that collectors will dream of owning, and that represents one of the greatest numismatic treasures in existence. The market for coins at this level operates differently than the regular coin market. We're talking about private treaty sales handled by the most exclusive dealers in the industry, or consignments to major auction houses where the coin will be given feature treatment and marketed to the wealthiest collectors in the world. And when a coin like this comes to market, the sale often makes international news because we're talking about values that exceed many famous paintings, rare stamps, or other traditional collectibles. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is that everyone watching this video takes the time to check their 1996 D quarters, because based on the mintage figures and the estimated survival rate of error specimens, there are almost certainly more of these coins out there waiting to be discovered, and the next person to find one could be you. Don't assume that all the good coins have already been found. Don't think that only professional dealers and collectors get lucky, because history has proven time and time again that ordinary people just like you, make extraordinary discoveries when they take the time to look carefully at their coins. The 1996 D Washington quarter worth $199 million represents the absolute pinnacle of what we've discussed today. It's the grand finale, the ultimate treasure, the coin that proves beyond any doubt that incredible wealth can be hiding in the most ordinary places, and I want to thank each and every one of you for staying with me through this entire journey, for learning about these 5 extraordinary Washington quarters that could literally change your life if you're fortunate enough to find one. Remember, the 1987 P at $100 million, the 1973 at $115 million, the 1997 D at $128 million, the 1988 P at $150 million, and our grand finale, the 1996 D at $199 million. These are all real valuations for real coins that exist in the world right now, and any one of them could be sitting in your possession at this very moment. So here's what I want you to do as soon as this video ends. Go through your coins, check every Washington quarter you own, look for the dates and mint marks we've discussed, examine them carefully for errors and unusual characteristics, and if you find anything that seems even remotely unusual, get it checked out by a professional because you could be holding a fortune without even realizing it. And if this video has opened your eyes to the incredible world of rare coins, if you've learned something valuable today, if you now understand that pocket change can literally be worth millions or even hundreds of millions of dollars, then please, do me a favor and hit that like button, subscribe to the Coin Merchant channel for more incredible coin content, and share this video with your friends and family because everyone deserves to know that they might be sitting on a fortune. Check your quarters, check your change, and who knows, maybe the next success story in the rare coin world will be yours. Thank you for watching, and happy hunting.